Good evening, Singapore. This is Tean after work, except with a change. Today, I have my People's Voice shirt on. It's a hectic period here because we are virtually down to the last 48 hours of the campaign now. It's crunch time. And I thank all of you. I have been flooded with messages of support. I thank you for your physical support. I thank you for the financial support you are giving my party. I ask that you continue giving us the donations which we need, in the final days of the campaign. It is so critical. We have a historic chance, my friends, to end Josephine Teo's leasehold on her office. And I am sure that is something that many of you are looking forward to. We cannot have Josephine Teo continue on as a minister and as an MP after the disastrous performance of the last few years. Ever since she became the manpower minister, and especially this year with a huge explosion of COVID-19 in the foreign workers' dormitories. Funny thing was, I called for the elections to be a referendum on her competence and her leadership. And she told the Straits Times, oh no, the election should not be a referendum on me. All right, I'm not so important. And then she goes off hiding behind her party's slogan of jobs, lives, future. It's our jobs, it's our lives, it's our future. My friends, when have elections never been a referendum on a politician? An American president is allowed to serve 2 terms or 8 years. After 4 years, he has to stand for re-election. And isn't the re-election an audit by the voters of how he performed in the last 4 years? He can't go off and hide behind a slogan. For example, you can't be Trump running on a slogan of Make America Great Again 4 years ago, and now your slogan is Keep America Great Again. And can you believe it if Joe Biden were to tell Americans this election is a referendum on Trump, and Trump says, no, it's not. It's about keeping America great again. How stupid will you sound, right? So I don't understand what Josephine Teo is trying to say, except she is running scared. She does not want to be judged on her record because she knows that it is a record of incompetence. And instead, she wants to hide behind her party, and she wants to divert attention and tell people, oh no, it's about your jobs, about your future, about other things. And the voters can rightfully ask her, well, if you are not even competent in what you have done in the last few years, why should we trust our future to you? Yeah. So clear cut. And if I were you, I will keep asking her to explain herself. I will keep asking her to explain about her competency. And, the funny thing was, yesterday morning, she and her team went to Whampoa Market to canvass for votes. And then one elderly citizen who happened to be a stallholder got quite agitated and asked her about the $3,000, which obviously he applied for and did not receive. And so you can see from that video clip, he's quite angry and he wanted answers. And what did she do? She just brushed him off. She was in such a hurry to deliver campaign flyers and to shake hands or maybe, do fist bumps or whatever and to say hello to other voters. She had no time for him. She turned around quite abruptly, gestured to him, and then was off. And then Heng Chi Hao muttered something. And then it was Denise Phua at the tail end of that group who then motioned to one of her assistants to say, take his name down. All right? And that's the best you can do even during a campaign period when people will be peppering you with questions? Yes. You know, I get calls every day now, especially during the campaign period, asking me about various things, asking my help, you know, about certain HDB issues. For example, today, my colleague, Gilbert Goh, was campaigning in Punggol, Pasir Ris. And then one of the residents there approached him because she had a leak in her apartment. And then he sent me a photo, all right? And off he went to help her. And after a couple of hours, he texted me and he said, problem solved. So people do expect your attention. People do not expect a minister and MP in an election period to just whiz by them, throw a few flyers, say, vote for me, and are off again. I don't think that is the best representation of how a person who aspires to be an MP in the next term should act. In fact, one thing I would like to emphasize during this session this evening, my friends, is this. I want you to ask yourself, to sit back, close your eyes, and contemplate for a second. What do you think the Singapore will be like in the next 5 years if on the 11th of July, the score is 93-0 in the PAP's favor? You have seen what has happened in the last 5 years, all right? Very clear. And I never tire of telling people this. If you have the courage to vote in enough opposition, you are going to be so surprised that your life is going to improve by 10 times. You know what is the problem? The problem is that in 2015, so many people were caught up with the emotional and the euphoria of Lee Kuan Yew's death and SG-50, that they virtually gave the PAP a sweeping mandate. And has that mandate translated into a better life for you these last 5 years? Has it been easier for you to find jobs? Has it been easier for your next generation once they finish schooling, once they graduated, to find jobs? Has it been easier for you to expand on your standard of living the last 5 years? I am sure your answer to many of these questions would be no. Life, in fact, has become a lot tougher. And you sometimes have to just sit back and realize that, are you the one beating yourself over the head by repeatedly voting for the PAP, by repeatedly believing in their narrative, that without giving them this overwhelming mandate, your life would be in trouble? And isn't that what Heng Swee Keat said again today? I was just reading the papers this afternoon, this morning, all right? And Heng Swee Keat says WP using fear of opposition wipeout to win more seats. And you know, I couldn't believe what I read in the papers. He said, oh, can you imagine what would happen if you wake up on the 11th of July and you find out that the WP have won 4 GRCs and 2 SMCs, which is the number of seats the WP are contesting in? What will our people think, and what will foreigners think? What will the investors think? My friends, we have heard this repeated narrative for the last 40 to 50 years. And let me assure you, if on the 11th of July, you wake up and you find that the PAP have won 70% of the seats and the opposition 30 to 35%, I assure you, your life is going to be 10 times more wonderful. Yeah, 10 times more wonderful, because then you know you will have credible opposition in Parliament to check the PAP. They are not going to be able to come up with stupid reasons to raise water tax by 30%. They are not going to be able to come up with crazy reasons to keep raising conservancy charges or electricity tariffs, or to keep petrol pump prices the same, even when the price of oil has collapsed. And that is the meaning. At the end of the day, that is the meaning of elections. It is not about voting for me, my friends. I ask you to vote for yourselves. On the 10th of July, you are voting for yourselves. And I ask you, in all good conscience, do not keep beating your head, believing the PAP narrative that unless you give them 93-0, this crazy, overwhelming majority, our country is going to sink into oblivion. And the other thing is, you have seen for yourself the performance of these PAP MPs, in Parliament. Most of the time, the House is almost empty. I mean, our Parliament is the laughing stock of the world. And the debates are like tea parties. Everything is prepared. You've got to submit this written question, all right? And then the minister or whoever gives a written reply, or he reads from the script. And sometimes he doesn't even bother to turn up, and he sends his second in command to read the script. And then I never ever hear any follow-up questions in Parliament. How is that a debate? You tell me. And talking about debates, Heng Swee Keat and Chan Chun Sing are attempting to get away with this election without debating the opposition. They want to be the Prime Minister, the future Prime Minister, and the future DPM of Singapore without debating the opposition. All right? And that debate the other night, which featured Vivian Balakrishnan, was not a real debate. It was nonsense. I have been challenging them for 3 years now to debates on HDB, to debates on jobs, to debates on all kinds of subjects. They have not taken up that challenge. And then, after nomination, they surreptitiously invite 3 opposition parties, all right? And they exclude PV. Even though PV is fielding 10 candidates, 1 candidate behind the SDP, all right? They won't invite me. Why? Because they are afraid of me. That's the simple answer. Yeah? I mean, that night, if Vivian had given me that answer about the 10 million population, I would have given him his due. I really would have. And so, yesterday, you saw the same thing happening. All right? Chan Chun Sing comes to tell the Singaporeans, oh, we have looked through all the manifestos of the opposition. And in them, nothing is said by any party about the plans on how to handle COVID. And then a few hours later, you have Tan Cheng Bock coming out to challenge him openly to a debate. All right? Have a debate with me and Paul Tambaya. And what does Chan Chun Sing do? Honestly, he has no courage to accept a debate. He then issues a statement on his Facebook and says, oh, why don't you reveal your plans before elections so that Singaporeans can see? Can you believe that this is coming from a former 3-star general? All right? You are telling the electorate that the other parties don't have the plans, and the other party now challenges you. Okay, let's have a debate and let the people judge. Yeah, you're like a little girl, all right? You go hiding again, and you don't dare to debate. And let me issue this challenge not only to Chan Chun Sing, but to all the other parties as well. I am very prepared to have a debate with anyone on COVID, because I would like to remind everyone again, People's Voice was the only party who from early February told Singaporeans that the PAP was taking us down a disastrous path. No other party spoke up, all right? No other party spoke up. And what happened? We were proven right in every area. On the 3rd of April, when Lee Hsien Loong came before the Singapore people with his tail between his legs and made that U-turn. So, you want to have a debate? You better involve People's Voice, because we have been the ones telling people the correct path since February. And my friends, we cannot have a situation where the PAP gets away by telling the people, oh, look here, got to return us with a robust mandate, with a strong mandate. We've got a leadership in place. And the leadership does not even have the courage, the wherewithal to debate their opponents, especially at a critical time like this of the elections. Let's debate, Mr. Heng, and you will have the opportunity at this debate to spell out clearly, which you fumbled on nomination day, on how you have a plan for the East Coast. You were unintelligible. Totally. You couldn't even string 2 sentences together. Until now, what plans have you got for East Coast? So this debate will offer you the best chance to tell the residents of East Coast what plans you really have. And someone has made a comment about Punggol Pasir Ris. You know something, my friends? Our team in Punggol Pasir Ris, which consists of Simon Lim, Gilbert Goh, Nasir Ismail, Prabhu Ramachandran, and Vignis, are doing fantastic. They are doing so well. They are being mobbed whenever they visit residents, whenever they visit coffee shops. You know, our flyers have been snapped up, all right? And you know why they are being so welcomed. It is because we have done our groundwork. We know our level of support, all right? We are not a party that comes out 2 weeks before the elections, do some walkabouts and tell people we have been in this area for the last 13 years. It doesn't matter. I am not the person who gives respect to a party who has been contesting repeatedly in a constituency without any success. Yeah. And I have been very cooperative with other opposition parties that I think are in with a very strong chance, or who have a reasonable chance of competing well. We started our groundwork in Choa Chu Kang, in Tanjong Pagar, in Pioneer, at a time when the Progress Singapore Party was not even formed. And yet, at the end of the day, we were magnanimous enough to give up those constituencies to them, to fight in. Nearer this election, when we saw that no one had laid a claim to Punggol West, we said we wanted to fight in Punggol West. And we would have had justification to do that, because Punggol West, which is now an SMC, was formerly part of the Punggol Pasir-Ris GRC when it was a 6-member team. And we know that area very well. We have been to that area of Sun Xieling. I led my members there last year, and we bumped into her. And we were cordial. We said hello to each other. That was captured on film, on video. And after that, we went back repeatedly. So we had all the justification to go and contest there. And we had done house visits. We had walked the ground. But it so happened that almost immediately after I announced our interest and our intention to fight in Punggol West, the Workers' Party also said that they wanted to fight in Punggol West. And again, we did not engage in a three-corner fight in Punggol West because we know that the Workers' Party is a party that in between elections does its work. So if there is a three-corner fight, I say I'm very sorry, but I am doing it for the interest of Singaporeans because I believe the stronger party should always have the ability to contest in that area. And I'm not afraid. I don't have to draw in other celebrities, other politicians of high standing to help my team there. They can take care of themselves. And I'm sure on election day, they will do very well. They will confound the pundits. And we are going to run very, very strongly in both Jalan Besar and in Punggol Pasir-Ris as well as Mountbatten. And all three constituencies are places where we have done our work. My friends, I have spoken for quite a bit. I think I have taken quite a lot of time today. And I should stop there and invite some questions. Are there any questions? Yes, I see that there are a lot of... Okay, there is a question about CECA, which I would like to address. So I have just made a video to spell out the proposals in our manifesto. And we are going to follow that up tomorrow with a very innovative way of presenting the details in our manifesto. But one thing we do address in our manifesto is this. The centerpiece of our manifesto is our proposals on jobs. And you will know by now that we want to freeze the issuance of all S passes and reduce significantly the number of employment passes. We want the good paying jobs in Singapore, those that pay $2,400 and above, to be done as much as possible by Singaporeans. And I don't believe the narrative that there is a mismatch of skills or Singaporeans are not skilled enough, not qualified enough, not educated enough to do those jobs. That is just bunkum to me. We are one of the most educated people in the world. And you keep telling me year after year that there's a mismatch of skills, that we don't have the skills to do those jobs. Well, if that is true, then there are large question marks over our education system. All right? Why are we not upgrading our education system to meet the needs of industry? So don't come and give me all of that. My starting point is I want Singaporeans as far as possible to do well-paying jobs that pay $2,400 and above. Yes, foreigners can do the other jobs that Singaporeans are unable to fill. But even then, I want to see mechanisms in place for the transfer of knowledge and skills from that foreigner to that Singaporean, so that eventually Singaporeans can do the jobs themselves. But in the manifesto, we also say CECA must be abolished. And I have spoken about this repeatedly. My party is not a party that says CECA must be reviewed. To me, what is there to review? CECA is a one-way street, all right? It has become a one-way street for India basically to export its unemployed to countries like Singapore. Do you see the reverse direction happening, Singaporeans rushing into India to work? You don't. And that is something, the CECA problem was the stumbling block in what was known as the RCEP, the Regional Cooperation, Economic Partnership in Asia, which was supposed to be a grouping of 16 nations, all right, including China, India, Australia, New Zealand. India wanted the same provisions of CECA in the RCEP. And countries like China, New Zealand, and Australia said no. You know why? Because those nations are concerned about the livelihoods of their citizens. They are not going to allow the livelihoods of their citizens to be threatened by foreign labor. And India was equally adamant. India was equally adamant and said, well, if you don't give in on that, I'm not going to sign up to it. And China, New Zealand, and Australia said, fine, okay, then let's not go into that treaty. So you see, the smart nations have decided on that course. Our stupid ministers, honestly, the stupid ministers and our stupid civil servants committed us to CECA. Heng Swee Keat led the government negotiating team that negotiated CECA. I mean, how can anyone sacrifice the interests of Singaporeans in that way? What is the benefit to Singapore? Yeah, you have your big corporations being allowed to invest in India more easily. But at the end of the day, how has the wealth trickled down to that average Singaporean? I don't see it, my friends. All I see every year are more Singaporean PMETs being displaced by foreigners. I hope I've answered you on that, and but that certainly is PV's position on CECA. Someone has asked me on the opinion about removing POFMA. My friends, this election should be a referendum on many things. This election should be a referendum on, amongst other things, conflicts of interest. Do you want a government that will tell you there is no conflict of interest, but in your heart, you know that is not true? In your heart, you know that when the spouse of a minister or a minister of trade takes up a high responsibility position in government, that is a conflict of interest. So make your vote on the 10th of July a referendum on that issue. And I know it is an issue that upsets many Singaporeans because, you know, at the end of the day, we were brought up to be fair-minded, to be objective. We dislike things like conflicts of interest. We dislike corruption. And despite what the PAP leaders may tell us, we inherently know that something is not right. Yeah. And I ask you also, make the vote on the 10th of July a referendum on POFMA. You know, during this election campaign, can you count how many POFMAs they have issued? And this time, it is supposedly issued by these high-ranking civil servants in the ministries who have been delegated the responsibility. So in an election season where there's supposed to be free discussion of issues, these unelected officials in the ministries take it upon themselves to tell us, oh, you have uttered a falsehood. So they become God, right? They become the arbiters of truth. And how silly is that? How silly is that? My friends, I have always been against POFMA. I think the freedom of expression of speech is one of the most fundamental rights and a valuable asset in the fabric of society. It is because we do not enjoy full freedom of speech in this country that we are not a creative country. We are not an innovative country. And it saddens me when I see parents outside hushing up their children whenever they talk about something sensitive, looking over their shoulders. You know, we shouldn't be a society like that. All right. We always admire other cultures, their courage, their ability to speak up. But why is it that in our own nation, we are so diffident? We are so scared of authority. I do not think that bodes well for our country, for our nation. And I am sure you do not want your next generation living in a country like that, or even their next generation. Because to be a progressive nation, we must move towards total freedom of speech. And yes, I assure you, the day people's voice is in government, we are going to abolish POFMA within 24 hours. Just like we are going to abolish that discredited, shameful reserve presidency. Someone asked me, in the interest of public health, why aren't the elections cancelled? Good question. And again, my friends, that is typical PAP tactic. I tell you, the PAP have always used fear to win elections. You saw that when 9/11 happened. Within weeks, the elections were called, and the opposition was almost wiped out, right? I think only Low Tia Kiang and Cham Si Tong survived. And then again, you had the financial crisis. Again, they called. So the PAP are masters at using fear to win elections, because they think that in times of crisis, there is a flight to safety. People flee to them. And so that is what they are trying to do with COVID. No sensible government, or a government that cares about the safety and the health of its citizens, will put them in harm's way in this manner. But here you have, in a few days' time, you are going to go to the polls. At a time when Singapore is still seeing triple-digit number of cases every day. And only a few days ago, you had in Tampines Street 11, Block 111, 9 cases there. What does that show you? It shows you that, or it shows me certainly, there are an increasing number of community transmissions. And so the danger is there. I'm afraid the danger is there. But you have a government that does not care and is only interested in getting itself into power for the next 5 years. And I hope the vote on July the 10th can also be a referendum about the government's uncaring attitude. And I always liken a government to a father. In jobs, I have said, when a government allows a foreigner to take away the job of a Singaporean, it is like a father who welcomes an alien child into the family, showers that child with love and affection, but neglects his own child. And that father is a bad father. And in this pandemic, a father that endangers the health of his children is a bad father. So I hope on the 10th of July, you also make your vote on a referendum on this careless, uncaring attitude of the PAP government. I'm going to take just a few more questions. Parliamentary attendance, should it be mandatory? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, our parliament actually doesn't sit very often. I mean, you have seen the British Parliament, right? I mean, when it is in session, which can last for a few months, Parliament is in session every day, and there are sittings every day. All right? Our government, our parliament sits maybe 4 or 5 days a month, at most. At most. I think there are even some months when it doesn't sit. All right? And yet, the PAP MPs treat it like a tea party, you know? Yeah? Some of them have got like 64 directorships. There is an aspiring candidate MP now from their side who has 69 corporate positions. I mean, you tell me, where have you got time for the public business? All your time is being devoted to private business, and that should never be allowed to happen. If I'm in government, I would certainly want to make attendance at all parliamentary sittings mandatory. And only in very exceptional cases should an MP be excused. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Someone has also commented that the premium for health insurance keeps going up. My friends, I think this is one of the most disgraceful issues in this entire MediSave scheme that we have. You know, Leong Zihian, my party member and my teammate in the Jalan Besar GRC team, told me last year we had 96 billion, 96, not million, billion dollars tied up in MediSave. The other day when I did an interview with PJ Tham, which I think some of you would have seen and which I certainly am going to post onto our Facebook, I learned from PJ that the figure was something like 110 billion now. You know, with 110 billion, you can easily have universal healthcare where people do not have to pay for healthcare. And universal healthcare is a hallmark of a truly first world nation. If you ask any Briton today, what is the one institution they are most proud of, that they most cherish? I tell you, 90% of them will tell you it is the NHS, which stands for the National Health Service. It was started in 1945, right after the war. In fact, it was conceived during the war. But during the war, Winston Churchill was the prime minister. He was from the Conservative Party. They had already had papers published, all right? They had done studies into it. But it took the Labour government after the World War, under Clement Attlee, the prime minister, to institute that. And that Labour government of 6 years was remarkable because it transformed the face of Britain. It redistributed wealth. And you know, my friends, in Singapore, a few years ago, PAP and Ong Ye Kung said, inequality, tackling inequality in our country is our top priority. Yeah, after that, you know, they went quiet on it. Because actually all their policies promote, they do not reduce inequality. The sad thing is, people must realize, when you have a capitalist system and you have a neoliberal system, like what the PAP practices, neoliberalism is that system which believes if you make the rich richer, the wealth will trickle down to the rest of society. So they are always profit motivated. They are profit driven. And isn't that the case in Singapore? You know, so many people comment on social media. This government is interested only in making money. It's not interested in anything else. Our public institutions now, our public services are run for profit. Yeah. The problem is when you have a capitalist system and you have a neoliberal system, you are never going to reduce inequality. Inequality is forever going to expand. And then so what happens then? About 18 months ago, Oxfam came out with that famous report that said the PAP government was one of the bottom 10 governments in the world in its commitment to fighting inequality. And then they push out Desmond Lee to defend. And he gave nonsensical answers like, 80% or 90% of Singaporeans own their own homes. What has that got to do with reducing inequality? And that growing inequality is seen in the rising gap, wage gap, between the top few percent and the rest. All right? And so now they change their language. They no longer talk about fighting inequality. In fact, you have Josephine Teo say at a forum in 2018, which was also attended by Tommy Koh. And Tommy Koh was taking her to task and saying that it is disgraceful that in Singapore, you do not have the minimum wage or a living wage. Because the minimum wage has been implemented in so many advanced countries in Asia, and it has lifted millions of people out of poverty. But no, the PAP will not agree to a minimum wage. It has this nonsensical thing called the Progressive Wage Scheme or whatever, the PWS. You know, basically the wage of a cleaner today compared to 10 years ago is not much better. Yeah. And in the meantime, we have a prime minister who earns 152 times what a cleaner earns. So how are you going to reduce the inequality gap? My friends, if you study the history of the advanced nations, you realize one thing. You are never going to close that inequality gap unless government takes proactive steps to redistribute wealth. And I do not mean literally taking money from someone and giving it to another person. No, the redistribution of wealth has to be in the form of things like free healthcare, free education. And that is what we must aspire to in Singapore. I mean, Singaporeans pay so much into MediSave, but you hear all the horror stories of how people go to hospitals and MediSave only pays so much. And then they have to hand out huge outlays in terms of cash to pay their bills. All right? We should not be in that position. And so many elderly today are fearful of even seeking medical treatment because they are fearful of the cost involved. How is that representative of a first world nation? And for you, the younger Singaporeans out there watching me, you have to be concerned. And I know you are concerned about inequality because this has a huge impact on your future. And even for the parents who are watching me now, you have to think of your next generation. Because how many of those very, very top jobs paying millions of dollars are available? And do not be beguiled, do not be deceived by Taman's narrative of the social escalator, that social mobility. In Singapore today, most people are moving backwards on that escalator. It is like you trying to go up on an escalator that is coming down. So you have to vote in more opposition members from progressive parties who believe in social justice, who believe that the wealth of our nation must be better redistributed to benefit the great many and not just the privileged few. I hope I've answered that with some detail. My friends, I have spoken for quite a bit today. It's coming to 45 minutes already. I know you are busy with other things. I thank you for watching me. I'm going to go off to my evening walkabout now. There are only about 54 hours left of the campaign. I hope you continue to give PV your support, and I ask you for your donations as well at this critical period of time. Thank you very much.